Tim used to adore summer, and now this season seemed to return the affection, blessing him with warmth and other joys, such as the ability to find food and shelter without much effort. The beginning of Tim's homeless life coincided with the warm season, but he was horrified at the thought that, with the onset of cold weather, his life would change for the worse. However, he tried to push away the gloomy thoughts, focusing instead on daily minor problems, such as where to find work, spend the night, wash and eat without getting beaten up. Rapidly, Tim figured out where he would be safe and where the likelihood of encountering hooligans, crazed by summer freedom and hormonal surges, or law enforcement officers, who were sometimes even meaner than the thugs, was high. Of course, he hadn't always lived like this. More precisely, not so long ago, because of his own trustlessness, someone else's dishonesty and unfortunate circumstances, he had slid down the social ladder to the unenviable status of a person of no fixed abode, or simply a homeless person. Being a child, Tim could not have imagined that in the future he himself would become a vagabond. His parents, learning about his future, would have been horrified. Shame and disgrace. Their youngest son, the favourite and darling, had turned into a vagabond, forced to fear the police and live on the street. The man refreshed himself by swimming for a while in the river, rubbing away the goosebumps with a towel forgotten by someone on the beach. Then he carefully placed it in his travel bag, which now held all his belongings, put on his clothes, shaved, looking at himself in a mirror shard, and then walked briskly along the embankment. Early in the morning, trucks with goods would arrive at the numerous cafes on the embankment, and sometimes he could earn a bit by carrying boxes. Even if they paid him with products instead of money, it was still something. Tim couldn't find a permanent job because he didn't have any documents. As the cherry on top, he also didn't have any acquaintances in this city that was foreign to him. Travelling by plane and train was impossible due to the lack of documents, and hitchhiking back home over 1,000 kilometres was scarier than staying put. It was one thing if he had cash, but travelling just for luck was too big a risk. Now, he needed to either earn money intensively or find at least some place to preserve the remnants of decency before returning home. Although Tim was engrossed in heavy thoughts about the future, he did not forget to keep a watchful eye on his surroundings. On one of the benches, he noticed a hot dog that someone had left untouched. Without much hesitation, the man sat down next to the food and began to eat, mentally telling himself not to rush. Suddenly, he felt someone's gaze on him. A small girl, whom he hadn't noticed right away, was staring intently at the food in Tim's hand. It didn't take any supernatural gift to understand that the child was hungry. The few passers-by at this early hour hurried about their business, paying no attention to the little girl and the man having his breakfast. Tim asked, "Whose girl are you?" There was no answer. The man asked the next question, "Are you hungry?" The girl remained silent, but the way she swallowed her saliva while looking at the hot dog made the answer obvious. Tim broke off the part he had bitten into and handed the untouched portion to the little stranger. "Here, have some." The little girl, who looked about 5 years old, did not refuse, and quickly devoured the not-so-tasty sausage inside the bun, smeared with ketchup and mustard. However, she did not rush to leave. Tim offered her water, and the girl, taking it, waved her hands as if in gratitude. The man wasn't an expert in child psychology, but he tried to ask questions as gently as possible. "Where did you come from? Did you come here to walk with your family and get lost? What's your name?" However, the girl remained silent and only shook her head in response to all the questions. Tim frantically tried to figure out what to do next. The easiest option was to get up and leave, far away from this little girl. This option would cause him no trouble except pangs of conscience. A more complex path would be to try and find people who could help the girl get home. But whom to turn to? He was afraid to even approach the police station. What if they would set him behind the bars? They could easily accuse him of committing a crime, especially since he couldn't explain who this girl was, and the girl was silent. If the police decided that he was involved in her condition, he would be in big trouble. Tim, watching the little girl, drank down his supply of clean water, reasoned aloud, "Properly, I should take you to the police or a hospital, so I won't have a problem. My conscience would be clear and you would be safe, and your family would find you there. Or even better, just get up and leave. There are plenty of people walking around here, and someone will surely notice you and help you." The man stood up from the bench and was already leaning down to pick up his bag when he felt a small, cool child's hand on his arm. The little girl shook her head desperately. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Tim hurried to reassure the stranger, albeit a bit clumsily and roughly. "All right, no need to make a fuss. If you don't want to go to the hospital, you don't have to. But keep in mind that I don't have a home, and you'll have to sleep wherever you can. I have a secret hideout for now, but it's only a matter of time before it's discovered, and I'm kicked out." Tim spoke to the stranger as if she were an adult, unwittingly sharing his accumulated pain with her. It had been a long time since he had the opportunity to express everything that tormented him, and it was hard to find a more suitable listener. "I don't even have enough drinking water. Well, I can drink from the taps in the restroom, but that might be dangerous for you. The issue of maintaining hygiene is also unclear. The water in the river is still cool for such a little one like you. In short, nothing but problems. The scariest thing is that when the cold comes, I don't even know where to go. You, one way or another, will have to end up in some institution." The girl clung tightly to his hand, and it took him a long time to calm her down. "Listen, while we're here, so to speak, talking, there's less and less chance of finding a job for me. This means that food will be scarce today, so whether you like it or not, I have to go. That's how it is, you understand?" Wiping away her tears with her free hand, the girl nodded seriously. Tim sighed softly. "Well then, let's go. Maybe we'll get lucky." There was no work in the nearby cafes, but towards the end of the embankment, a kind-hearted waitress seated the girl at a table under a tree, gave her a plate of mashed potatoes and a cutlet, and asked Tim to unload a car that had arrived and help rearrange the tables under the awnings. So the little girl stayed with Tim. Since she never spoke, the man called her Little One, and she responded to it. Caring for the child pushed him to be more active, and it turned out that the girl evoked pity. Together they were more often given work and paid more generously. The cellars, where he used to get his part-time job, often left desserts for the girl, and even brought a few items left over from their daughters or granddaughters. A week had passed since the morning the little one had joined Tim, and he had grown attached to her in his own way. One evening, as they walked through the back alleys of restaurants and cafes, hoping to find something eatable, Tim sighed. "Ah, if only we had some ham, dried sausage, or at least semi-smoked. You'd like it, little one. These are hearty foods, not like sausages that might not even be made of meat. You take a bite, savour it, and then you don't feel hungry for a long time." The mere thought of the taste of quality meat products made his appetite grow, and Tim wanted to treat the girl to something especially delicious, not just what was thrown in the trash. This gastronomic idea turned out to be a tantalising obsession that, passing by the back door of one of the many restaurants on the street, Tim couldn't help but steal the coveted product. Of course, this was a clear descent into the abyss of homeless life, but at this very moment the man decided to compromise his remaining principles. He asked his little companion to wait around the corner of the building and watch the bag with their things. He put on a hoodie, pulled the hood over his head in case the entrance was monitored by cameras, took a couple of boxes lying near the door, and, pretending to be a delivery man, slipped in through the back door of the restaurant. The plan, of course, was not great. In fact, he had no clear idea of what to do once inside. Tim had no idea how the establishment he intended to pilfer was set up, but he was lucky. First, he didn't run into anyone, and on a table probably meant to facilitate the receipt of goods, he saw a box containing various sausages. Mentally, asking for forgiveness for his action, Tim took a piece of dry cured delicacies and, anticipating a feast, was already heading for the exit when he heard a stern shout behind him. "Hey, stop!" Of course, Tim had no intention of stopping and continued towards the door. "Hey, I'm talking to you! Stop! Are you deaf or something?" Tim, realizing he was in deep trouble, rushed to the door, but it was too late. Someone grabbed his shoulder. Tim tried to free himself from the grip, but to no avail. He braced himself for a beating, but instead suddenly heard, "Paul speak? Is that you? What brings you here? Why did you come in through the back door of my restaurant and try to steal?" Tim was just as surprised and replied to the vaguely familiar man, "Yes, my last name is Speak, but I'm not Paul, I'm Tim, his younger brother." The well-groomed man with a strong grip introduced himself, extending his hand. "I'm Robert McDonough. I served with Paul and visited your place a couple of times, remember?" Tim felt terribly ashamed, and he spoke hurriedly. "I remember. I'm overjoyed to see you, even under these circumstances. Please forgive me for coming in here. Here, take it." Tim handed over the sausage. The restaurant owner seemed to ignore the information about the failed theft and continued to ask questions. "How is Paul? Is he here too? And how are you? Are you visiting this city, or have you moved here?" Seeing Tim's face darken, the attentive Robert realized he had touched on sensitive subjects, and looking at his clearly expensive watch said, "Damn, Tim, I have an important meeting. Please wait for me in my office. I'll have some refreshments brought through. Relax and eat, and then we'll sit down and talk properly." Tim hesitated. "Robert, I'm sorry I have to go. Someone is waiting for me on the street and probably already worried about me. I understand that you don't want to sit here in the office while someone is waiting for you, but I also don't want to just part ways with you like this. I'll order food for you and your friend, and you can both sit at the table to the right of the back door. As soon as I'm free, I will come right away. Does this option work for you?" Tim nodded gratefully, accepted 2 large bags from the hands of a pretty waitress, and promised Robert, "Thank you so much. I'll wait for you." Seeing her adult friend appear at the door, the girl who had been watching the entrance ran up to Tim and tightly hugged him. "Everything is fine, little one. I met an old acquaintance. See, he gives us so many treats that we will have a real feast now. He allowed us to sit here." The girl let go of Tim's arm and trustingly walked beside the man to the table under a canopy, and then they began to enjoy the hearty and delicious food from the restaurant that he had tried to rob. The vagabond and his little companion managed to finish most of the dishes, and the girl even started on the dessert when Robert emerged from the back door. For him, it was a complete surprise that the person waiting for Tim turned out to be a little girl. Trying to maintain a calm expression so as not to frighten the child, the restaurateur sat down on a small stool and introduced himself. "Hi, my name is Robert. What's yours?" Tim answered for his ward. "You will find everything I say strange, but it is the pure truth. The girl is mute, but hears and understands everything. We have been walking the streets together for about a week now, but I haven't heard a single sound from her, and I don't even know what her name is." Robert whistled. "Wow! What have you gotten yourself into?" Tim spread his hands. "I don't know myself. It just happened that no one cared about the little one except me. So now we wander together. True, I don't know how long this can last. Surely someone is looking for her, but I'm afraid to go to the police." Robert, having come to terms with his surprise, offered, "Listen, Tim, I invite you to my place. There, in a calm atmosphere, we will talk, exchange news. You can even spend the night without any problems. There is enough room for everyone." Tim did not refuse. The opportunity to wash with hot water, maybe even take a shower, and send the little one to wash in normal conditions was more than pleasant. He put the uneaten food in a separate bag, and taking the girl by the hand, followed Robert to the parking lot. When Tim opened the door in front of the little one, she, realizing that they were about to ride in the car, started to resist. This was strange, but there was no time to ponder the reasons for such behaviour. "Robert invited us to his place. He is my old acquaintance, a friend of my brother, and you don't need to be afraid. You trust me, as I understand?" Tim waited for the girl's consent, expressed by a short nod, and only then continued. "Well, and Robert is trustworthy too. You can wash with warm water at his house, maybe even watch cartoons. You probably love them. I, by the way, adored them in childhood. I'll tell you a secret. I would watch something with pleasure even now." The girl, after thinking for a moment, sat in the car's cabin, and the men followed her. After the hearty meal and the rocking motion of the car, the little one dozed off. A half-hour later, Robert, having opened the automatic gates, parked near the two-storey house. A small hallway led to a living room with a sofa, where Robert suggested putting the girl, who was still asleep. "Let her sleep, she must be tired, and we will sit in the dining room. Let's go." Tim carefully covered the girl with a soft blanket and followed the host. Robert handed the guest a set of clothes, towels, hygiene products, and explained, pointing to 2 doors in turn. "Here is the bathroom, and straight down the hall is the dining room. I'll go there, set a small table in honour of the meeting, and wait for you. Don't rush, and don't worry about the girl. If she wakes up, I can calm her down." Tim enjoyed the hot water, scrubbing his skin with a washcloth lathered with fragrant gel. He cleaned his teeth, combed his overgrown hair during his wanderings with a comb, and went to the dining room to answer all of Robert's questions. The host tried his best, and on the table were meat and fish appetizers. Pouring a yellowish liquid into glasses, Robert proposed a toast to the meeting. Tim drank the drink, which immediately gave him a feeling of warmth and calm. The tension of the last months, when he was forced to wander, retreated, and the man relaxed. At this moment, he did not need to look around for food or for a timely escape from potential danger. There was no need to listen to what was happening around, and Tim prepared for a difficult story. Robert did not rush him, but still asked that which interested him the most. "How long has it been since we last saw each other? About 10 years, as far as I can see. How is Paul doing?" Tim became even gloomier and began to tell what had happened in his family's life since the last meeting with Robert. "Unfortunately, Paul died heroically. He couldn't live in a peaceful life after what he went through in the war. I don't need to tell you. You were there too, and know very well that the memories stay with you forever. When another campaign started, Paul volunteered to join the ranks, even though our mother, father and I, and his fiancée begged him to stay. He responded to all our pleas the same way. He said he had experience, and that it could save the young recruits, like me, his brother. In short, we first received the sad news of Paul's death. At his funeral everyone held themselves together, but after the burial, my parents' health began to deteriorate rapidly. Soon, I was left alone. I lived on autopilot. I got my degree, found a job. I even had some ambitions, willing to work overtime just to avoid returning to an empty apartment. It was a strange life, Robert, I tell you. My career was taking off, but there was no joy in it. I started seeking emotions online, on dating sites. It was fun and it seemed to make me feel less lonely. In short, without going into too much detail, things got serious with one of the girls, Ellie. The fact that there were many kilometres between us didn't hinder our communication. We had a long correspondence. Then we could talk on the phone for hours, and then she came to visit me as a surprise. She called me from the train station on Valentine's Day and said she had taken an unplanned vacation just to spend this holiday with me. It was overwhelming. I showed her around my hometown, and for the first time since my family's passing, I didn't feel lonely. Ellie stayed for a week, and we spent most of our time in bed. It was fantastic. I was going crazy over this seemingly modest girl. When she was getting ready to leave, she invited me to visit her in return. Naturally, I didn't delay my visit to my beloved. We met a couple of months later on her turf, in one of the cities in that region. It was a fantastic week. With each passing day, I grew more attached to Ellie, and eventually I proposed to her. She didn't play coy and agreed right away, but she reminded me that she had no plans to move away from her hometown. Pressing herself against me, she straightforwardly said she would be happy if we lived together. I promised to think about it, though I already knew the decision I was going to make. The next morning, I told her that we would meet soon and wouldn't have to part again. I went back to sell my apartment and buy another one where Ellie and I could be happy together in her city. This took some time, and we were almost constantly in touch. We would always talk briefly in the morning and then chat almost until dawn in the evenings. I sold almost all my belongings, and with a minimal number of clothes and a few photo albums and a substantial sum on my bank card, I went to my beloved. She arranged an evening for me that was truly unforgettable. I was in the euphoria and somehow told her about my plans, mentioning the amount on the card and even sharing the PIN code as a sign of special trust and love. After that conversation, I felt an incredible fatigue. The last sweet memory is of me falling asleep, carefully led to the sofa, kissed on the cheek and covered with something warm. The awakening was far from as pleasant as I would have liked. Instead of a kiss, I felt a kick in the ribs. Instead of the soft sofa, I found myself on a hard bench. Instead of Ellie's sweet face, I saw the stern faces of two policemen. One of them had woken me up with a rough kick. When they demanded my documents, it turned out that they were missing from where they should have been. Anxious, I started looking for my passport in my bag, stammering out what had happened to me. The policemen just laughed. They didn't believe me at all. To be fair, it's not difficult to understand why. The story was too convoluted. After all, according to me, I had fallen asleep 1,000 kilometres away from the city where I woke up. I managed to persuade the younger policeman to go to Ellie's social media page, to call her on the number listed there, which I had been too lazy to memorise. I was worried that my beloved might also have fallen victim to some evil scheme and could be in a frightening situation. However, her voice, coming through the speakerphone, told the police that she didn't know any Tim Speak and had never been to the city where, according to me, we had met. After this information, my already confused and sluggish state became completely indifferent. I didn't even resist when one of the policemen, who had suggested that I was under the influence of banned substances, which had caused my strange fantasies about the girl and the missing documents, searched my bag. He took the bills from my wallet, leaving very little. My attempt to protest was met with another kick in the ribs. As they left, they informed me that they are currently having no claims against me, but it would be better for me to leave their territory as soon as possible, or next time they may not be so kind. Gradually, the full horror of the situation began to dawn on me. It seemed that the police were partly right. I must have been under the influence of some substance, and had revealed all my secrets to Ellie. The fact that she had answered the call and calmly and brazenly denied knowing me indicated her confidence that I wouldn't find the truth. The girl knew from our conversations that I had no close relatives and had even lost touch with friends after the loss of my brothers and parents. In short, I was an easy target. I voluntarily sold my apartment and went to Ellie, who might not even be her real name. I started remembering oddities. For example, my beloved never introduced me to her friends or relatives. There were no typical feminine touches in her apartment. No flowers, photographs, or cute knickknacks. During the week when I stayed with Ellie, this didn't bother me. Who knows what style my beloved preferred? Honestly, I didn't pay attention to such minor inconsistencies when a charming beauty was by my side. After coming to my senses a bit, I still went to the police station, but it was unsuccessful. They refused to take my statement because I didn't have any documents. They literally asked me to leave and not bother them. So I've been wandering like a vagrant, and recently a mute girl joined me. And so we've been surviving, eating the food I get in exchange for small services. I can't imagine how I got the idea to sneak into the restaurant kitchen today. Robert, I ask for your forgiveness again." Robert listened to the brother of his war comrade without interrupting, and when Tim finished his story, he poured a little more cognac into the glasses and began suggesting measures to resolve the situation. "Life has beaten you down, Tim, but I think restoring your documents won't be too much trouble. Not instantly, of course, but within a reasonable time, everything will work out. As for the money on the missing card, I'm afraid it will be more complicated, and I can't guarantee the result. In any case, don't be sad. It's great that you found me. It's time for me to return the favour. I owe Paul my life, so I'll do everything I can for you, his brother. It's my sacred duty. You can stay with me." Tim began to thank Robert warmly, and then he asked a question that had been bothering him even more than his own well-being. "I understand that this is presumptuous of me, but I also need to figure out what to do with the girl. I was afraid to take her to the police so I wouldn't end up being blamed. Not only does she not speak, but I noticed that she feared the car." The man nodded. "Yes, the situation with the girl is much more delicate. It's unclear why no one is looking for her and how she ended up on the street. This could take a terrible turn if a homeless person without documents goes to the police and says he found her by chance and doesn't know where she came from. You know what? My wife will return soon, and we will discuss all this with her. I'll call her now and ask her to buy some girlish things, and you make yourself at home here. Eat, drink, and feel comfortable." After the encouraging conversation, Tim, who was already relaxed from the shower and the treats, felt as if a weight had been lifted from his heart. Of course, he was ashamed that he had burdened a virtual stranger with his problems, but he was truly grateful to Robert for taking such an interest in his fate. Even a brief respite from wandering, spending the night in normal conditions, already improved his mood. Lost in thought, Tim peeked into the living room and saw that the girl was already awake. "Hey, are you awake?" he said gently. "Do you want to eat?" The girl nodded. Tim's little companion eagerly devoured everything the host offered, delighting him with her contented expression. Robert, who had already caught his wife, said quietly, "It's wonderful when children eat with appetite. They can be picky, saying they won't eat this or that, but she's not like that." After the meal, Robert suggested turning on cartoons for the girl, and she nodded joyfully, settling on the now familiar sofa in the living room. The men took the chair next to it and also enjoyed watching the funny chases of the mischievous cat after the clever mouse. The idyll was interrupted by the front door swinging open, and a charming woman entered, carrying 2 large bags. She gave a nod to the men, and then sat down on the sofa next to the girl and handed her a doll she had taken from the bag. "Hello, my name is Jane, and this doll dreams of becoming friends with you and playing all sorts of interesting games. I also have bath toys, soap bubbles, and little ducks that float. Let's go have some fun with them, and then we'll finish watching the cartoons." The girl, as if asking for permission, looked at Tim, and hearing from him that she could trust Jane as well, reached out her little hand. The woman took one of the bags she had brought and went to bathe the little one. Tim grew anxious. "And your wife won't mind that you've brought a vagrant and a little girl with an unknown past into your home?" Robert reassured his guest. "We often have people staying with us, mostly friends, sometimes business partners, and a few times just acquaintances of acquaintances. Besides, she knows that if it weren't for your brother, I wouldn't be alive at all, so don't worry about it." About an hour and a half later, when the men had discussed many stories, mostly related to Peter, Jane entered the living room. She was without the girl, and seeing the surprise on Tim's face, explained, "I took the little one to the children's room, dried her hair, and she started to fall asleep, so I put her to bed. Besides, I took a picture of her. We should check if there are any missing children in the database who look like her, and now we all need to rest." Robert showed Tim the guest bedroom, and the poor man, who had regained hope for a return to normal life, fell asleep peacefully for the first time since his wanderings. The new day brought unexpected information. "Her name is Fiona Marshall, and she is considered to have run away from an orphanage," Jane said. "They were brought from the distant region on an excursion, and no one noticed at what point she either accidentally or intentionally fell behind from the group. They obviously don't want a scandal, so there's a chance to quietly go and return the little one. It's the weekend now, and the principal's stationary number isn't answering, so we just have to wait for Monday." The little girl played with her new doll, and she beamed with joy. Watching her, the adults felt both tenderness and concern. After all, Fiona would have to return to the orphanage, and although this is, of course, better than wandering the streets, life in a state institution can hardly be called paradise. For Tim, this day in the family circle, where everyone treated each other with love and respect, reminded him of a happier past, and he almost cried from the surge of emotions. And he also felt sad, as he surprisingly realised about parting with his little companion. There was no denying that she complicated his life, as he had to take care of her, feed her, and worry about being questioned about their relationship. But at the same time, it gave his existence meaning, although, if he thought rationally, their separation was inevitable. Meanwhile, Robert also had news for Tim. "On Monday, we'll go to the police station to see Detective Cicero. He is already aware of your misfortunes, and I was promised that he would approach the situation with the utmost consideration, so don't be sad." The next day Tim was very nervous, but the meeting with Detective Cicero went well. The policeman behaved correctly, didn't mock or sneer, and only grimaced painfully when, in his story, even softening the details, Tim told him about the arbitrariness of the law enforcement officers. "Of course, I apologise deeply for this incident. I think you understand that personal purges are conducted regularly, but it is still impossible to completely get rid of the inappropriate people here. Regarding the scam you fell victim to, we will do whatever we can." When the men got into the car, Robert encouragingly patted his protégé on the shoulder. "Well, consider the matter moving. Everything is in motion, and that means you'll have your documents soon. Meanwhile, so you don't get bored, if you like, you can work in my restaurant. We are always short on additional hands." Tim didn't know how to thank Robert. Words seemed pale, and he replied, "I can even work as a simple cleaner, because I am very grateful for everything you are doing for me." Robert waved his hands dismissively. "It's nothing. It's important to me that the brother of my saviour gets his life back on track." Robert and Tim spent the whole day busy with work, and in the evening Jane shared some news. "Tomorrow they will be expecting Fiona at the orphanage. They have entrusted us to deliver her there ourselves, although I think they are just saving on gas. Anyway, that's the situation. Now, we just need to inform the girl, and for some reason I am sure she won't be thrilled with this news. Robert, I have a completely free day tomorrow, so I can take the girl without any problems. I'd also like to see what the conditions are like in that institution." "Can I come too? Fiona seems to trust me," Tim asked. "Robert, is it okay if I ask for a day off, right after starting work?" Robert smiled. "Consider it a work day on the road. Besides, we'll load the car with sweets for the orphanage kids early in the morning. It feels awkward to show up empty-handed." That's what they decided, and despite their efforts to put on a brave face, the adult's mood was far from cheerful. Fiona took the news that she had to return to the orphanage stoically. The girl didn't throw a tantrum or cry. She started unbuttoning her dress. Jane understood that the guest thought that they would take away her gift, and kneeling in front of her, quickly buttoned it back up, saying, "No, sweetheart, the dress is yours to keep. It's yours now. I promise we will visit you. Do you believe me?" The girl nodded seriously, like an adult. She went to Tim, shook his hand, either thanking him or saying goodbye in advance. The summer morning of their parting was cloudless. Although Jane tried to cheer up the passengers in her car, she wasn't in a cheerful mood herself. The woman drove the car slowly, following the navigator's instructions, but the destination inevitably approached. Jane parked the car by an unremarkable fence, behind which children about 10 years old were playing, and the passengers got out of the car. The playing children curiously examined the visitors standing at the gate and unsuccessfully pressing the button on the outdated intercom. No one answered. Jane was already starting to look through her phone for the principal's number, but a stout woman approached the gate, whose mere glance could freeze someone on the hottest day. "Hello, I'm Mrs. Perry, the principal of this institution," she addressed the visitors. "Please come in, and thank you for finding and helping Fiona." And, opening the gate, she invited Fiona and her attendants. The principal's office was quite modest. On the walls, in simple frames, hung certificates of honour, photographs of Mrs. Perry in the company of vaguely familiar people, and a portrait of the country's leader occupied a place of honour directly above the principal's chair. "So, I am listening. What did you want to talk about?" Jane, confident and even somewhat at ease, although she was on someone else's territory, shared her idea. "You see, I am a fashion designer. I create and sew clothes, adding hand embroidery. I create interesting toys, and would like to offer you a collaboration. For example, I could come, say, once a month to conduct a masterclass. I think the children would find it interesting. Plus, I could bring some treats at the same time." Mrs. Perry, interpreting this offer in her own way, clarified, "OK, I understand. What do you want in return? I warn you right away, our budget is tiny. I have no way to pay for all these masterclasses. What can I say? The button on the gate hasn't worked for a month. Some rooms don't have anyone to change the light bulbs in the fixtures. And instead of qualified educators, we have to hire graduates of our own orphanage, practically without special education. I'm not even afraid to say all this to outsiders because even if I get reprimanded for such frankness, they won't dismiss me. There's no one to replace me." Jane patiently explained, "I'm not asking for payment. All the training will be on a voluntary basis. All we need from you is a room and a group of willing participants." Mrs. Perry looked at the visitor and smiled sarcastically. "You make it sound so simple, although I am ready for a good idea. Just don't disappear, as they say here, because adults come and go, and the children wait, hope, and get disappointed." Jane promised. "No, I won't disappear. I'm genuinely interested in this." Tim suggested, "If you like, I can replace the light bulbs and try to fix the intercom." Mrs. Perry graciously agreed, and while the man was busy, Jane asked, "Please tell me Fiona's story. Maybe I could try to find a doctor who deals with muteness." The principal sighed, looking sad, which made her seem like an ordinary, tired woman rather than a snow queen, and she told the story. When Fiona's aunt brought her to us, the girl was already not speaking. As it turned out, the reason was the shock from the car accident she was in with her parents. The girl survived, but her mum and dad did not. Fiona had seen her aunt no more than 2 times before this tragedy. The woman confessed that she didn't know how to deal with children, and her lifestyle wasn't suitable for a little girl. But she only agreed to look after the apartment left by Fiona's parents and to pay the utility bills for it until Fiona became an adult. In general, I don't blame her. Everyone has their own destiny. Raising a child is not an easy task. Who would know this better than me? Jane and Mrs. Perry exchanged phone numbers, and the principal escorted the visitors to the car. Fiona was allowed to say goodbye to them, and the principal barely managed to persuade the girl to unclench her hands, which she had gripped around Tim and Jane's hands. The return journey passed in even more oppressive silence, and only at the end of the trip Jane said, "It's strange. I didn't do anything bad today, but I feel like a traitor. I feel so sorry for Fiona." Tim nodded. "Yes, I feel something similar. The little one trusted me, and although I couldn't give her anything, and I myself was thinking that we would have to part ways before the cold weather anyway. If you don't mind, I will accompany you on your trips to the orphanage to see Fiona." "Of course I don't mind." 2 weeks later, Tim received his documents, and although Detective Cicero could not report positive news about the search for the scammer, this was already a big victory. Jane and Tim were going to visit the orphanage, and since it was Robert's day off, he decided to join them. When Fiona entered the room where her adult friends were waiting for her, Jane even shivered from surprise. The girl looked incredibly sad, and, not having a robust build before, now looked even more emaciated. Taking control of her emotions, the woman handed her a beautiful blouse, a fabric bunny, and several drawings. "Fiona, hi! Look what I brought you!" The girl timidly approached, but reached not for the gifts, but hugged Jane around the neck. The woman tried not to cry so as not to upset Fiona, and Robert came to his wife's rescue, who was losing her composure. "We brought not only these gifts, we have another surprise for you, sweets, but as Mrs. Perry promised, they will be given out after lunch." Tim, sitting next to the embracing woman and girl, also contributed by saying, "Imagine, I'm no longer a vagrant. I got a new passport. There's such a funny photo in it. You want to see?" The little girl nodded, and the atmosphere in the room became a little less tense. Jane, as promised, conducted a masterclass, but the leaving was tearful for everyone. Later that evening, laying in her bed, it suddenly dawned on the woman. "Of course, we should think guardianship or adoption. Robert, what do you think about the idea of taking Fiona in?" Robert shrugged. "You know I don't mind children at all." The family began gathering documents and completing all the formalities. During another visit to the orphanage, the woman asked Fiona, "Do you agree to move in with me and Robert permanently?" The girl nodded so vigorously that there could be no ambiguity. Mrs. Perry, who was watching this scene, was genuinely happy for her ward. "Fiona has an apartment, and if you take on all the obligations about the girl, you will also have to take care of the apartment and fulfill all the necessary formalities. You need to meet with her aunt to resolve this important issue. The principal wrote the coordinates of Fiona's aunt on a piece of paper, and Robert arranged a meeting right away, choosing one of the nearest cafes. "I'll spend a little more time here with Fiona and join you at the cafe later. Anyway, you don't need me there." And an hour later, entering the cafe, Tim froze in surprise. Sitting on the sofa opposite Jane and Robert was Ellie. He could not be mistaken, for it was this very profile that he had first almost worshipped and then hated. In a few steps, he covered the distance that separated them and grabbed the woman firmly by the shoulder, causing genuine surprise to Jane and Robert. "Tim, are you okay?" asked Robert. "Meet Sasha Marshall, Fiona's aunt, and you should be more polite with her." "Robert, Jane, before you is the very Ellie who lured me out of my hometown like a gullible fool and robbed me, taking not only the money but also the photo albums that reminded me of my family. Robert, how quickly do you think Detective Cicero can get here?" Tim's voice trembled with nervous tension as he spoke. Meanwhile, Ellie, or Sasha, managed to regain her composure somewhat and tried to accuse Tim of being inadequate. "Jane, Robert, I am seeing this person for the first time. As far as I understand, he is acquainted with you, so only for your sake I will not make a scandal. Just tell him to let me go, and we will forget this incident. In the fall, people might have some mental issues." Tim was a little confused and then suggested, "Put your hand on the table." The woman reluctantly obeyed, and Tim asked Jane, "Roll up your sleeve to see the large birthmark in the shape of a small apple on the inside of your elbow." Jane did as he asked, and was almost not surprised to find that Tim was right. Fiona's cousin turned out to be the very woman who had caused Tim's vagrancy. Detective Cicero arrived and began investigating Ellie and her accomplices. In the end, she received a prison sentence, and Tim was refunded most of the money he had on his card on that unfortunate day. After all these events, Tim decided not to return to his hometown, but to settle near Robert's family. He rented a cosy apartment, from which he could even walk to their house. He often visited Jane, Robert and Fiona. The girl, thanks to her sessions with specialists, started to overcome her muteness, little by little. And soon there was another addition to the family. The birth of the long-awaited baby was the best reward for Robert and Jane's good deed. As the doctors had said, it was practically impossible. So, in the end, everything worked out for the best. Besides, Tim had started a romance with one of the waitresses at the restaurant, and he believed that this time it would be sincere.